welcome to everyone. Thank you for your flexibility with us. Last week was a bit of a challenge in Dallas, so we rescheduled. We are so glad that you have chosen to spend your Friday morning or afternoon or maybe Friday evening with us. So for those of you who are kickstarting the weekend, we hope this is an enjoyable way to do so. Just for those, we may have some new folks on. What we try to do here is go through questions that were provided beforehand through the form that's sent out to the community. We are not able to answer anything that's any questions in the chat, but please, do send those in for the next session. We try to get through as many as we possibly can. We typically have more questions than we can answer in an hour, and so anything that you can find on the website or that we have, in other places, or that has previously been addressed on a town hall, those are things that we tend to skip over or potentially do at the end, because we know we have a number of folks on this call and in the community who have been with us a long time and don't want to hear us just repeating ourselves. So we always try to bring you something new and different and the questions that are most timely and relevant. And with that, I will kick off and start to ask some questions of the folks that you want to hear from. So Leemon, to start us off, is there a way for the communities to suggest features and standards for Hedera?
Ooh, great question. I am hip to that. So we now have the HIP, the Hedera Improvement Process, HIP. And there are several HIPs out. I think HIP 1, was the one that I wrote on checksums. And then lots of people gave feedback. We have another HIP that explains the HIP process and defines it. And there's other HIPs, I think, in the process. We're just getting started with this. The idea is that the community as a whole proposes things, gives their feedback on things, tells how it should be tweaked, and so on. And so it'll be just like an RFC for the internet and, all those other things, ERC, and there's other types of processes for giving suggestions and then creating standards. And so the community itself will be creating these standards. I love this. And we expect to do more and more of that as time goes on. Yeah, I'm very, very excited about our new HIP process.
All right, thanks, Leemon. We are getting some questions. I think we've addressed this a little bit, but we wanted to address it today. What is the expected worldwide performance of smart contracts on the Hedera network compared to the Ethereum network, especially once the Hedera network is deployed and tuned to full scale?
Sure. So we have smart contracts, and smart contracts can do anything. They're Turing complete, but they have limitations in speed and other things. And so what you want to do is find ways of doing your business logic in a way that is fast compared to a smart contract. So we have HCS and HTS. So if you recall, HCS is our consensus service. It allows you to build an appnet, and you can write your program in any language you want, and it runs at native speed, which is as fast as you could possibly get. Furthermore, since it's running on one appnet of many, it has that whole appnet to itself. It maybe doesn't have a whole lot of other traffic, and so it has the whole computer to itself and can run much faster. So if you really want speed, you want to be able to run in any language, have it compiled, run on its own little network, and then divide up the work between different little networks. That's what the consensus service is for. And then sometimes you want even lower latency than that, and you want even more convenience than that. And so then what you do is you take specific items, and instead of having them as smart contracts, you build them into the bottom layer itself. You make them native to the ledger. And that's the Hedera Token Service is making tokens native to the ledger itself. And so you can do many thousands of token transfers per second, and you have all the security of Hedera. You don't have to look at a smart contract and wonder if there's any bugs in it. It's just Hedera itself is doing the token. So lots of nice advantages to having tokens on Hedera itself. Oh, plus you have this great interoperability, is that you can transfer tokens from one person to another, even if they're different types of tokens, and you can do it atomically and do it multi-way. So I give Alice a token, she gives Bob a token, Bob gives me a token, and there are 3 different kinds of tokens created by different people, but we have a single transaction that does it all. Maybe it moves some HBARs too, maybe I'm giving Alice several different kinds of tokens at the same time, all of that. And then it's atomic. Either the whole transaction happens or none of it happens. So lots of nice advantages to that. So the answer is, yeah, you can always do smart contracts, but if you want real speed, you want to use any language you want, and you even want to have parallelization, then you can use the consensus service. And if it's tokens, you can use the token service for extra speed.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Mance, this next one is for you. There has been a lot of discussion, especially as the price of transactions on various platforms has, has fluctuated and gone up. Can you share your feedback and insights on how the price of HBAR as it rises will impact transaction fees and the cost of using the network or platform?
Yeah. Well, so let me just start by saying that in the past, what is this? This is the end of February. So in the past 6 weeks, the price of the token has gone from approximately 3 cents to, I don't know, 12 to 15 cents. The price per transaction hasn't budged. It's been fixed, and that's by design. The costs of transactions are denominated in dollars, and it doesn't matter what the price of the token is. It's, it's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up and down. But anybody building on the platform that needs to plan for the future, what their, understand what their future costs are going to be when they make API calls, they don't have to worry about that. And what actually happens behind the scenes is that there is an SDK that developers can use as part of building their applications. And when they want to make API calls, it will tell them how many HBAR is required for a given API call. And I think it's about once every hour. Leemon, you can correct me, but I think it's about once every hour, the number of HBARs required for a given API call is adjusted based on the current average price of HBARs in the market. So, we understood from the very beginning that was a problem that had to be resolved. And so it was built in, the solution I described was built in from day one.
All right. Thanks, Mance. Leemon, can Hedera be used as a lightning network for Bitcoin to increase the speed of transactions on the Bitcoin network itself? Any projects that you know of working on this?
Yeah, isn't this a cool concept? So Lightning is cool on top of Bitcoin. Things like Plasma are cool on top of Ethereum. There's lots of L2 solutions that are cool. In some cases, they're making up because the underlying ledger is pretty slow. But ultimately, everyone does L2s for various things. And an L2 is a computer or a set of computers that have to be doing some things. There's some communication involved. There may be some agreement involved. You could even imagine L2 systems that involve multi-signatures going on. There's all sorts of interesting things you can do in an L2 kind of network. And how can you set up a little network of computers that all work together? Well, you can do this with Corda and Hyperledger and other ways of kind of setting up a little network. You can write your own code from scratch. But how do you make them all be communicating with each other and coming to an agreement if they need to be doing that? If they need to jointly sign a transaction, how do you do that? How can you do things with oracles where you need to have a bunch of computers watching something and then signing that something actually happened? In all of those cases, HCS may be the ideal thing to do. So you build your Hyperledger or Corda thing, but you plug in HCS. Or you just build your thing from scratch, but you use it on top of HCS, our consensus service. And that allows you to have very rapid communication with all the nodes in your L2 system, whatever it's doing. And you get this record of everything they've ever done because it's going through HCS. You have this immutable, permanent record of everything they've done. And if they need to come to agreements on things, there's a very easy way to do it. If they want to say, well, we will accept gossiped ideas from other people until a certain point in time, well, guess what? Everything flowing through HCS gets a timestamp on it. And so we'll all agree on which messages came before that time and which ones didn't. If you need to do joint signatures on something, you can use HCS to communicate between yourselves. There's just a lot of nice things of having a reliable atomic broadcast with consensus timestamps attached to it and a consensus ordering attached to it. And that's what HCS gives you. So I love the idea of building L2 solutions for every ledger in the world. And then I love the idea of doing that on HCS. It's a really good match because you have high throughput and you have this immutable record. You have all these low costs, all these nice things. So yeah, I love that kind of idea for L2 in general.
Very cool. Thank you, Leemon. Okay, this one is around coins and private keys. So with cryptocurrencies, lost private keys mean lost coins. Is there a plan to prevent this kind of lost private key from acting as a deflationary pressure on HBAR?
So people will lose keys, and we have committed to not printing more HBARs. So in that sense, it's inflationary. Now, of course, for any token that can be divided into 100 million pieces, losing a few tokens doesn't actually hurt anything. It doesn't hurt liquidity of the market. If you burned half the US dollars in the world, you have some problems because you can't get smaller than a cent. But when you can divide into 100 million pieces, it's not a big deal. So every ledger has this issue where people lose their coins this way. Some ledgers actually allow you to burn, but you get the same effect if you just lock it up in a smart contract for eternity and there's no way to get it out. Or if you forget your keys, you can't get it out. So it's a mildly deflationary thing. Sure, I don't think it hurts anything. But there are ways you could imagine a ledger clawing the money back. And I think most people would prefer just leaving it the way it is, where you don't claw anything back.
All right. Thanks, Leemon. Mance, while we are on the topic of tokens, where can people go to get up-to-date information about new tokens being minted using the Hedera Token Service? And any insights into the development and utility of new HTS projects?
Yeah. So the go-to place today is Dragon Glass. They have added support for HTS tokens. I looked at it again last night just to check it out. It's dragonglass.me, and you'll see a new tab up there that it refers to tokens that are running on top of Hedera. So if you go there, you can check it out, see what tokens have already been issued. And I'm sure there'll be others in the future that provide the same sort of service, but that's the place to go today.
Very cool. We love to see when the community builds those kinds of things. Leemon, this one took me back to Web Summit in Portugal in fall of 2019. You previously said that quantum computing isn't a threat to cryptocurrency. A couple years after that, do you still feel the same? And do you think quantum computing could benefit or enhance Hedera?
Oh yeah, so sure, I still feel the same, and so do the world's cryptographers and the world's quantum physicists. So I think quantum computing is really cool, and it continues to make progress. Just today, actually, I was reading an article about passive quantum error correction. Someone had yet another scheme for doing passive quantum error correction, which is cool because it's usually the active kind that you hear about. Cool stuff. It is possible that we'll have quantum computers that can break crypto in the next 10 years. That's conceivable. Now, it may not happen. It may be a lot more than 10 years, but we could imagine that it might happen. In the next 10 years, we'll have computers that can break quantum, the kinds of crypto that we currently do. You could do that with quantum computers. So that will be extremely exciting. And when we do that, then of course, all the ledgers in the world will keep the same hashes they have now, except they'll have to make the number of bits slightly bigger. We're already bigger. We're at 384. It's recommended to go from 256 to 384. So we're already post-quantum in our hashes. You'll have to use good encryption, but everybody uses AES 256, and that's post-quantum. Everyone thinks that's secure. And so, we'll continue, using that in our TLS connections. And then the other two things that people care about is public key encryption, which we're not doing, and public key signatures. And so for most ledgers, that's the part that has to be updated for quantum. And there are a bunch of algorithms that we think are secure against quantum computers. And so we'll just switch to those. And I imagine that all the ledgers in the world will switch to those. If it looks like we're within 5 years of having such a computer, we'll do so. It doesn't look at all like that right now. You can even look at people like the US government, when they protect their own secrets, they use stuff that can be broken by a quantum computer. The standards for top secret, the CNSA standard, says, hey, yeah, you can use this stuff that could easily be broken by a giant quantum computer. And what they have said is that they believe, and they're protecting information that's supposed to stay secure for 30 years. They've said, we think quantum computers may actually come along at some point. So we do want to switch to algorithms that are secure, post-quantum algorithms. And so they told NIST to go ahead and have a contest, but they didn't say there was a rush. They don't even think that their 30-year information, their information that has to be stored for 30 years and kept secret, is being threatened by quantum computers right now. But NIST is doing this contest. And it's very possible, it's been fun to watch the contest, it's very possible that next year it'll end and we'll have a list of what the world's top cryptographers all agree are secure algorithms. Secure meaning, well, we don't think a quantum computer can break it. And we've tried really hard and we haven't thought of a way yet, which is the best you could do in crypto. Most crypto is like that. So, then all the ledgers in the world can talk about switching to it. The problem is that it's inconvenient. A signature may be kilobytes in size, whereas right now it's just a few bytes, like 32 bytes, but it'll be kilobytes in size for a signature. That's inconvenient and it's more expensive and it uses more bandwidth. And so, no one's in a rush to do that. And especially right now, we don't even know if the algorithms are secure. It's worth waiting at least another year till NIST gets done, or 2 years, however long it takes them. And then we can be sure that we have a secure algorithm. And then I imagine ledgers will offer it as an option, but very few people will want to pay for that because there's no urgency. There are enough people working on quantum computers in public that when we get within 5 years of that goal, we'll know it. It's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to wake up one morning and say, there's a quantum computer that can break all the world's crypto. So we're going to have years in advance of warning. At least that's what all of what the vast majority of cryptographers in the world would say, what the vast majority of quantum physicists would say, all of that. The good news is that there will be uses for quantum computers before they're big enough to do that, especially in simulations of quantum systems. And that's an extremely exciting use case for them. And so we'll see, maybe we'll get that. Maybe Grover's algorithm will be useful too, and you can make anything faster by a square root, but I'm not holding my breath on that. I think it's going to take a while till we get to that point, but we'll get there eventually maybe. And I really hope we do. We shall see. So no worries. Oh, and you asked if it could help us. It's not obvious right now that it could help us either. A quantum computer can't do everything. It can only do very narrow things. And at the moment, it's not obvious that any of those very narrow things would actually be helpful for a computer. But if someone discovered something weird, like you could do fully homomorphic encryption efficiently on a quantum computer, then yeah, ledgers might start using quantum computers. But at the moment, no one has any idea that even if we had giant quantum computers, how it could help ledgers, just how it could hurt us. And so, we'll switch our signature schemes when the time comes. I hope that makes sense. I think quantum computing is really fun. I've taught courses on it and it's just a really fun subject, but we'll see. It's fun to watch the progress.
Very cool. Thanks, Leemon. All right, Mance, the next one is for you and it's around council. The biggest concern, and this is from someone in the community who says, when I talk to other people about Hedera, their biggest concern is the governing council. Many folks are worried they can change the rules around an app or a cryptocurrency in a whimsical fashion. I like that we weaved the word whimsical into this discussion, by the way. This is problematic when thinking about a worldwide adoption of a cryptocurrency or a competing distributed app, given the current economic and big tech climate. Why shouldn't folks be worried about this? And what measures or mechanisms are in place to protect the integrity?
Yeah. Well, first off, it's interesting because when people think of the council, there's just sort of this knee-jerk reaction to think of it as this single monolithic entity, right? Which is as far from the truth as it can be. The council, if words matter, right? Which words you use to describe something matter. We should probably call the council a distributed community of organizations that are working together to prioritize features and provide governance of the network. And the heart of the question goes to what's the right governance model to prevent this sort of collusion or, attack, if you will, on the integrity of the system. And if you think about governance models, you can have a dictator. A dictator has total control, and it's really easy to corrupt by comparison. If you can persuade a single party to do something, whether that's through bribery or extortion or whatever, or maybe they just have poor judgment. You do have to worry about a dictator being whimsical, perhaps, in their decision-making process. That's what the whole industry is trying to move away from. On the other end of that spectrum, you have pure democracies where everyone, perhaps, that say holds an HBAR, or if we're talking about monetary policy for the United States, anyone that held a dollar would have a say in the management of the policies associated with that currency. That doesn't work either if the decisions are complex. So if you have really simple decisions, fine, democracies, let everybody vote. If you have really complex, hard decisions to make where subtlety makes all the difference in the world, you need experts. And that's what we have. What we have is a community of organizations that spend the time to figure out what the right decisions are to be made. And then they do their best to make those decisions. Now, the real question, or part of the question, the implication of the question is the use of this community of organizations that govern us worse than, say, a dozen core developers that are making decisions on any given other platform? Well, ask yourself that question, right? If what you're trying to prevent is this community to become bad actors in some way, then what forces or roadblocks can you put in place to prevent that sort of thing? What we've done is chosen this community of governors, if you want to think, maybe use that word, to be distributed across industries, to be geo-distributed and ultimately distributed through time. We believe that is more decentralized than many of the other platforms today that people would just immediately say, oh no, they're decentralized versus Hedera. So anyway, I think that the truth of the matter is that people can trust our governance model not to be whimsical to a greater degree than perhaps they would trust others.
All right, thanks, Mance. Okay, Leemon, we're gonna hit on all the big issues today. Why not, right? Can Hedera guarantee the CO2 negativity of their services, or are we CO2 neutral, positive, negative? Can you share more?
Yeah, so we are not having a very big CO2 footprint. If you look at our computers, our nodes, they're like 300 watts each. 375 was the estimate I got when I asked our guys to estimate it, because it's not proof of work. So I know that, say Bitcoin is using, over 120 terawatt hours a year, which is, more than Argentina. We're not doing proof of work. So we just don't have that kind of problem. So it's a very low amount of energy that it's using, a low amount of power that it's using, thousandth of it or whatever, or even less than that. Millionth of it, I think, something like that. So it's not negative. It's just a small amount right now. And, we may do things in the future to make it neutral or something, but, buying carbon credits, go plant a tree, something like that. But the point is, we're not really using a lot. Also, we normally have offices that we would power, and we're not even doing that now because we're all hiding in our homes from the COVID virus. And so we're really not using a lot of energy right now. I had the lights on in my house. I guess I wouldn't otherwise, but the lights in my apartment don't use very much energy anyway. So, we're just kind of using as little as a group of people could possibly use. It's not a huge group of people. The nodes are very low energy, and maybe someday we'll even be carbon neutral. But we are definitely not high carbon footprint, which is, a good thing.
Thanks, Leemon. A good thing indeed. Mance, this I think we probably should clarify because I think there's some different questions around how big Hedera is. The question is, it looks like you have currently 120 employees. With the rate of growth and increased transactions, how many employees do you forecast to have 2 years out, 4 or 5 years out, if all goes according to plan? And do you have any interns, and how can you apply to be an intern?
Sure. Well, look, Hedera has less than half that number, right? We don't have 120 employees, but I guess you could say that if you include the community of corporations and other organizations that are part of the governance model, then yeah, we have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, but that's not the case, right? I don't anticipate that Hedera will ever be really big, really large. I expect that the number of organizations that build value on the platform will continue to grow. And we see that. And Hedera will support them by ensuring that the network remains operational. You know, we view what we're doing as building and operating, by analogy, an operating system. And what we do as an organization is ensure that the function of the operating system, the features of the operating system, the availability of the operating system all continues and is available to those that want to build the value, you know, build their businesses and whatever on top of the operating system. So those organizations will continue to the number of those will continue to grow. They include app developers and system integrators and various ecosystem partners. But I don't expect that Hedera is going to end up having thousands and thousands of employees. It's just not required for the function that we're providing in the ecosystem. Regarding interns, we'd certainly welcome having interns. Probably it would be better for that to happen once we're working together again. I mean, big part of the value of being an intern is that you're there with the team on a day in, day out basis. That's a lot harder if everyone is virtual, but we would certainly welcome that when we all go back to the office.
All right, thanks, Mance. Okay, Leemon, so we've addressed quantum computing and energy, so let's take a swing at something else equally fun. This community member says that he or she and many others that they know hope that Hedera will provide an alternative to Facebook. How long until, or how might we be able to share personal information and other things like events on Hedera?
Go for it. This is a great thing to build. So not just Facebook, but Twitter and email and all kinds of social media. I think that the consensus service is a great way to build it. And I think it's interesting. We're seeing a lot of different social media today taking some heat for various things. And people are saying, well, we really need to make alternatives. And Hedera will not be a social service with all of the censorship that implies, and perhaps the advertising that implies. Hedera is providing a consensus service. And you can create companies on top of us, or open source software on top of us, or just give it away or sell it, or however you want to set up your system that uses the consensus service to provide a social network. And the mirror nodes, remember what's been pushed through it. It can be used for real-time messaging just by itself. And if you use the mirror nodes, then you can also have the history of the things. You might integrate a file service, even the Hedera file service for part of it. And I think it'd be great for people to build social media on top of the consensus service, on top of Hedera. I personally would like to have different choices of social services, or not social services, social media. And I would love to see some people building some of those. And yeah, go for it. I think it's a good thing.
All right. Related to that, Mance, what else? What else do we think people will build? Do you think there are a lot of still undiscovered use cases for Hedera and protocols like it?
Absolutely. There's no question. Even in the past few years, we've really began to understand the full breadth of how this new technology, distributed consensus as we understand it today, is going to be used. And I talked about this last time, and we've made a big deal about HTS and the tokenization service. In fact, I wrote an article I think was published in CoinDesk in December, talking about the convergence of 3 industry trends the move of business logic layer 2, the use of tokens in ways that previously were not anticipated, tokenization, the rise of tokenization, and DeFi, decentralized finance, componentized finance. What's interesting and noteworthy as it relates to this question is that if you took any one of those out of the picture, then the solutions that can be built using the combination of them, some of them would just not be possible. And what we'll see and continue to see is that different categories of infrastructure get defined and built out. And when that happens, it enables new classes of use cases. It's because we're so early in this, there's just no way that people have figured out what the full range of applications there are. There are a lot more today that can be built and add real fundamental value than what there were before. Part of that is just the performance of the platform. I mean, what we have in Hedera is the ability to have 10,000 TPS today throttled with seconds of latency and really low cost. That by itself, just the fact that we now have consensus with those properties enabled new categories of use cases. Combining that with other categories of infrastructure that are complementary just accelerates that. So it's impossible to really predict, but what we do know is that there are probably 2 decades of growth here in understanding and realization of the full potential of the new category of technology.
Thanks, Mance. Okay, Leemon, with any new technology, we have people who build amazing things, and we also have people who try to exploit it. So on the flip side of that, if anyone can tokenize anything, what will stop people from turning Hedera tokenized assets into a Ponzi scheme, like what has happened on Ethereum with ERC20s? And related, what will the Hedera equivalent of an ERC20 be called?
Okay, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Anytime you have a tool, some people will use it to do bad things with it. And be careful that you're not wasting your money on something that is a scam. So the only alternative to asking you to be careful is for Big Brother to come in and stamp out all the scams on our network. Well, we can't do that. We can't censor it. We don't even have the ability in the code to delete smart contracts or tokens. So you need to do your own research to make sure you're not getting suckered into something. It was like whoever invented email could have designed it so that all emails go through him and he can censor them. Another alternative is that you just need to be smart. When you get that email from that dictator that would like to give you millions of dollars, if you'll just pay a small fee, maybe you don't respond to it. It's just, I hate the fact that this is a world where there's scammers out there. And the world is full of scammers. You just need to protect yourself and don't send your money anywhere unless you're sure about what you're doing. We are more like the internet that carries all those emails. We don't know what the emails say, and we don't censor the emails, and we don't delete the emails. We're just the wire that's carrying the emails. That's our goal. So yes, please be careful. There is a lot of bad stuff going on out there. As for what do we call our ERC20? Well, I'll tell you what we call our ERC20. Ooh, it's hard to do that. The Hedera Token Service. We have tokens at the native layer. So it's like an ERC20 at the native layer. And if you use the HTS, then you get the native layer speeds, you get the native layer prices, you get the native layer trust, which actually is better than ERC20 in one sense. If some person claims to have a smart contract that's an ERC20, you need to go check, well, are there any bugs in the smart contract? Or did they use exactly the code that somebody else used that someone else has already checked? But if we tell you that it's just the native HTS service, then you know the properties of it. And so you don't have to go research each individual token. You just know the tokens in general. So there's security and cost and speed reasons to use HTS. Although we'll point out, we do have smart contracts. They do run Solidity. You can put ERC20 contracts on them. And so then in that case, the ERC20s are called ERC20. But there's a lot of advantages of using this thing instead of ERC20s. But you have that choice.
All right. Thanks, Leemon, and we appreciate the YMCA version there as well.
Did you notice I changed my backdrop just for this question?
All right, Mance, more folks who want to get engaged. How can I be a part of the team if I'm not a developer? I want to market and make all things Hedera understandable to the everyday person. Are there ways that I can help do that?
Well, what immediately comes to mind are maybe some of the most obvious things. We do welcome everyone to the community, right? And what I mean by that are what you would expect: Telegram, Twitter, other social outlets. You can help us perhaps in things like recruiting council members. We've had community members that happen to be in a position where they can make introductions to potential council members. We always welcome that. Supporting, support those organizations that build on our platform. If you see somebody building an application on the platform that you think is interesting and maybe you want to use, of course we welcome that as well. We want to support those that are building their businesses and their organizations on top of our platform, and we'd encourage our community to support them as well. So those are some of the things that immediately come to mind.
Thanks, Mance. And, we do want to say thank you to our community as well. You guys are so, you're so supportive and so fun, and you do so many great things that we can't even think of. So we definitely appreciate that. Leemon, this next question, I'm not sure the premise is actually correct, but I did want to flag it because I think it's important for people to understand what is happening. This one asks, Node 6 has been down for much of the month. If the SDK rotates sending transactions through the nodes, how is dropping every 15th transaction prevented when the transaction is sent to a down node?
Oh yeah, no transactions are dropped. So that doesn't happen. So the way it works is that, like what the SDK does, is it'll pick a node at random, and if that node, you can't connect to it, it just goes to a different node. It doesn't drop the transaction. You don't lose a transaction. At worst, you would lose the 1 or 2 seconds or whatever it takes you to realize that that node is not responding. You could even make that shorter if you wanted to. So nothing is lost. Furthermore, if you wanted to be smart, what you could do is program it to say, don't even just choose them at random, choose at random those that I have not had any problems with recently. And then you even save the second or two of time that it would have taken you to wait to know that it's not good. So if a node's not good, you talk to it less often. So we absolutely recommend that you pick nodes at random. Maybe you even pick at random where your distribution is. You don't pick it so often if it has been down recently. But we definitely do not lose any transactions that way. The only way you could lose a transaction is if you handed the transaction to the node and then the node crashed, which is extremely low probability. If that happened, yeah, then you lose your transaction. You have to try again, and you just try again. So you waited 3 or 4 seconds. You see, oh, it never reached consensus, and then you try again. So, or wait 2 minutes, and then it's out, actually has become stale and can't run, because usually the transaction itself has a time limit. So you can wait till that's done and do it. But generally, you're not going to have any problems. Just run the code of the SDK. You should be fine. And if you wanted to be clever, you could say, don't go to certain nodes that I haven't had good luck with recently. That would be a little bit more clever. If you were really into speed, you could submit your transaction to several different nodes at once. You pay a little bit more, but then you have, if even one of those nodes is fast, you get the fastest of those nodes. And that's another way of dealing with it. Lots of ways to deal with it, depending on what your situation is. But you don't lose transactions. They are not dropped.
Thank you for clarifying that, Leemon. Mance, the next one has to do with council. How will, and use cases, how will major mission critical use cases and enterprises obtain HBAR? Is it reasonable to posit that Google, FIS, et cetera, other council members won't buy off of exchanges? And how do we ensure that enterprises never have to worry about running out of HBAR?
Okay, let's just take them in order. How will major mission critical use cases and enterprises obtain HBAR? The same way everyone else does. They buy them off of exchanges or OTC desks. It's not reasonable to posit that Google, FIS, et cetera, won't be buying them in the same way. They will. Everyone gets the HBAR through the market. There's an open market of exchanges and OTC desks that make it possible to get the HBAR needed for those applications. Then the next question was, how will Hedera ensure that the enterprises never have to worry about running out of HBAR? This relates back to the earlier question, price stability. So the price isn't going to change for an API call, and the price for an HBAR goes up and down, and it gets calibrated, it gets adjusted on a regular basis. HBAR are infinitely divisible, by the way, and so it's not a problem to make the changes necessary to ensure that whatever the availability is of HBAR, it's enough that you can buy the HBAR to make API calls. So it's never going to be an issue by design.
All right, great. And
you can go to hedera.com. My apologies. You can go to hedera.com/guide to see the full list of exchanges and OTC desks. I think it's a full list. It's a large list. I don't know if it's exhaustive, but there's a lot there.
Cool. At least all that we know of. And it has wallets too. So it has wallets, OTC desks, custody services, exchanges. It's a long list.
Yeah. And it is updated regularly.
Mm-hmm. And it's hedera.com/guide.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody would put that in the chat.
All right, guys, so, I know that a lot of, we have some new folks to the community. Leemon, I think some folks would find it helpful if you can explain in a little more detail the importance of HBAR and its use for the Hedera network and, and in the business side.
Oh, yeah. So it's critical to the network. A network has to have a native currency because it's how you pay for transactions. And if you couldn't pay for transactions, then one person could do 10,000 transactions a second and use up all our bandwidth. You have to have a native currency for that sort of thing. In addition, as we go to anonymous nodes eventually, it becomes critical that a proof of stake system has some stake that you're proving that your proof of stake is for. And so this is the stake of the system. So the proof of stake there is important. So it's critical that you have something like HBARs in a system like this. And yeah, I don't talk about HBARs a lot. I really am trying not to hype things. From the beginning, we've been trying to have a 100-year company. We're trying to build something of real value. And I'm not going to stand up here and hype HBARs. And just the market as a whole has been kind of fun to watch the last month. But I don't want to stand up here and talk about it. It's just been fun to watch. But HBARs play a critical role in two different ways in the security of the network.
Great. Thanks, Leemon. Mance, the next one is for you. Adoption of Hashgraph by enterprises seems to be making good progress, but it seems like it lags behind other platforms when we talk about adoption within the crypto sphere. Is there a plan to get more adoption by these developers, in particular in areas like DeFi?
Yeah, so let's just sort of tease apart the question. Yes, we have had some adoption, really good adoption with certain large enterprises, and those have been talked about. Many of them have not been talked about. But in terms of just numbers, the small and medium businesses, the startups, far more of those than enterprise use cases. I mean, if you just look at what we are aware of, and we're not aware of everything going on, but on the website, I know that we've got about 50 that are meaningful in some way. I mean, just Agrio is connecting farmers to finance, Earth ID is decentralized identity, FPOS is stablecoins and micropayments. I guess you could call that an enterprise use case in some sense. Suku, supply chain management, Galaxy influencer, monetization. Clink is geosocial gaming, which is kind of cool. Diamond Standard, tokenized diamonds. Dovu, exchanging carbon credits. Ecclesia, digital collectibles marketplace, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. And so there's a really strong startup community building product on top of the platform. When it comes to DeFi specifically, I am aware of projects that are building out the the type of infrastructure that's needed to move tokens from one platform to another, and to have all that in place. I know some of them have already been launched, and so I think that there are people working on DeFi related applications for the platform, but that's just one piece of one category within the crypto space. Certainly it's been prominent over the past year because of the rise of the DeFi platform. So it's huge in terms of the news that's going on and excitement, rightly so. Very cool stuff. A lot of it is fraud, a lot of it is not. So very cool stuff. But I think it's just a misperception that the bulk of the work that's going on is enterprise. If we're just looking at numbers of projects, it's just not the case. The big ones are big, but there are a lot of small ones that are building as well.
All right, thanks, Mance. Leemon, another fun use case here. How could Hedera enable a stock market, for example, where orders are executed in sub-seconds? Do you have any particular architecture in mind?
Yes, so and probably HCS is how you would do it. For a stock market, within milliseconds of submitting your transaction, it becomes irrevocable. You can't do anything to get it back because it has started gossiping. And in a fraction of a second, it's gossiped to all the nodes. And so at that point, not only can you not undo your transaction, but you have now received credit for having submitted it. And whoever submitted first will win. So the contest to be the first one to get it in is going to be a fraction of a second. Now it's going to be a larger fraction of a second when we're talking about multiple computers than if we're talking about a single computer. So that fraction of a second is going to be bigger for a network than it is for a single computer at the New York Stock Exchange. But your bid becomes irrevocable. You can't undo it within a small number of milliseconds, and has reached all the nodes and has its point in history essentially set within a fraction of a second. And then within a few seconds, you get consensus. And you could say, well, that's terrible, a few seconds to get consensus. Well, sure, but the consensus is just putting the stamp of approval on something that happened during that first fraction of a second. And furthermore, because it's a ledger, you can talk about, well, it's the bid and the ask being matched. I mean, we know who's going to have it be sold to them. But we can also do clearing and settling all at once. You give me the stock and I give you the money at the same time. And all of that could happen within 3 seconds. So this is the nice thing, is that with ledgers, it doesn't take days to do clearing and settling. And if you send someone a wire, it can take days. Everything can happen within those 3 seconds. And so you've locked yourself in a matter of milliseconds, and then you find out the result of everything, including clearing, settling, and all the other stuff within a few seconds. So ledgers can be very good for markets, I think. And if you want to stop front running, already being fast makes it harder, but there's ways of you commit to a hash and then you open the hash and you have punishment if you don't open the hash. There's various ways you can do that even if you want to. But I do think that ledgers actually are a really good thing for markets, especially because you can do all the clearing and settling and everything else along with your matching all at once. And you get paid instantly and everything can happen instantly. And you can have more privacy if you wanted to as well. Or maybe you don't want more privacy. You have to decide how you want to set up your market. So lots of cool things about setting up markets.
All right, thanks, Leemon. Okay, I like the premise of this next one. Hedera in the future will be the world's dominant DLT platform. So what is Hedera's approach to adoption in authoritarian countries who might see the decentralization of information as a threat to their regimes?
I understand. So we are decentralized, so no one country can shut us down. Now, a country can build a firewall around itself and keep you out, or it could just make it illegal for you to go to certain websites. And I feel for people who can't get access to something. Hedera, I would argue they should allow access to, but they don't always listen to me. So they may or may not allow you access to Hedera. They can't shut down Hedera itself. It's on continents around the world, including Africa. We just announced that this week. I love it. Biggest bank in all of Africa. Fantastic. Standard bank. But it is sad that there may be places in the world where you don't have unfettered access to the internet and you might not be able to reach Hedera. Or maybe you could. Or maybe you go through Elon Musk's satellite link system. That might be harder to filter. I don't know. But we're going to keep running. We're going to keep providing service to everyone who can possibly connect to us. We will not turn you away. We would like you to do that in some of these countries.
All right, world of possibilities out there. We are getting close to the top of the hour, so we'll wrap up with two. The first one is short, and if you guys want to share your tips from the community member. You guys are looking good. Have you been working out lately? Quarantine best practices from Mance and Leemon.
Oh, I've always been allergic to exercise. I'm sorry. But I do walk 5 or 10 miles a day. I actually walk 10,000 steps or 20,000 steps. I love to walk because I spend the whole day on the phone and I walk when I'm on the phone. As for the other kinds of exercise that I should be doing, I always think I should be doing it.
Yeah, look, so I exercise my fingers on the keyboard all day long. I'm sitting here. I always have my cup of coffee, and I eat my gummy worms in the evening to satisfy the sugar cravings, and a lot of red meat. That's my secret.
Okay, secret to good health, gummy worms. Got it.
All right, and then Leemon, we have one last one here, which for those who have been with the community a long time, some of you may remember, you had previously created some coins. Can you share a little bit more detail about those and that one in particular?
I did. So in May of 2018, I had this designed and I 3D printed it on my 3D printer in plastic, but then I went to Shapeways and got it metal. And so I actually have two of them. This one is polished steel nickel, and this one is polished steel gold, which means steel with, I think, some copper mixed in, maybe it's gold plated. I don't know. It's not real gold. Shapeways will do that, by the way. You can buy a $3,000 gold coin or a $7,000 platinum coin or whatever. But this is real metal. And I just enjoyed this for the last few years, having this coin. You can see that the HBAR symbol is actually a hole in the coin. So you can see through the coin. Oh, there we go. Oh, look at that. You can see the serial number. So, well, you can't read it. It says 001. So I even stamped a serial number on this. And I think what we're going to do is we'll release this where if you want to buy a coin through Shapeways, you can get your own metal coin. Maybe we'll release the STL files. You can print it yourself. I don't know. But for this particular coin, the one that I printed that I had created in 2018 and as I have had since then, I'm going to give this one away. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to make a certificate of authenticity. It is serial numbered. I stamped a serial number on it today with a hammer and a stamp set. And we're going to tokenize it. So there will be a token in our HTS system for this coin. And we will auction it off and give the money to charity. And we have a charity in Dallas that helps single mothers that are homeless. And so homelessness is a huge problem. I fear it may grow. And in the recent cold, it's an even really worse problem. It got down to 8 degrees here, which to people in Dallas is really, really cold. And if you're homeless, that is cold anywhere. Minus 20 wind chill. And that's Fahrenheit for the rest of the world. In a normal civilized system, I don't know what it is Celsius, but it's cold, even in a normal civilized system of measurement. But in Fahrenheit, it was minus 20 wind chill. Anyway, it got cold here. Homelessness is a huge problem. So we're going to auction this off and we'll give the money to this service to homeless single mothers in Dallas. But you can see the coin. It's kind of cool. It's kind of, can you hear it? Kind of cool. They're kind of heavy. I like it. It's kind of thick and heavy. Has a hole in it. So tokenization for the win.
All right. Thank you, Leemon. Very cool. Thank you again to our community as always. I know for some of you who joined a little bit later, you will get an email before we do next month's. Please put your questions in there. As we mentioned, we always have more questions than we can address. So the ones that are in there are the ones that we try to get to first, and we appreciate it. We appreciate your flexibility joining us at our revised time due to the weather in Dallas last week, and some of you joining us on your Friday evening or night. We hope this was wild and crazy and celebratory enough for a Friday night. And we look forward to seeing everybody next month. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mance. Thank you, Leemon.
Right.
Thanks a lot. See you then.
Next month.